gets really fatigued out of that. She's looming out of bed, sitting in her desk, and then, you know, it's very, I feel that the energy stuck in her is so, like the children, they have so much energy. They want to explore, they want to go out and socialize, and it's really hampering their energy, creativity, and laugh, and, you know, being a child. So,
but do you think the children has adapted to working remotely now, or is it working for educational purposes, you think? Or
I think for educational purposes, I mean, this is kind of interim. First of all, I think it's this fast track of digitalization will actually test our capacity to, well, both just sit with your computer, but also when you have a teacher, I mean, you have to have scalable individual learning. So I'm an expert advisor to Sana Labs, and that's really when I see her. I
know some people there, by the way. So great.
Yeah, they're great people. Yeah, great people. But I mean, now it's pushing their needs. So they will, of course, see that they were on their phones and see the frictionlessness and the tailorization, and so then they're just sitting in front of one teacher trying to handle 25 students with different needs. So it's one way pushing them to get more digitalized, but also the gap between the public service and what they experience in their own world with their friends. So
and I think Sana Labs is a great topic. I think we should speak a bit more about that.
We parked that. But my 14-year-old, so he is also now doing homeschooling, or whatever you want to call it, and we live in Värmdö. And I had this conversation with him yesterday. You know, we're sitting at home working, and I'm in my teleconference. He's on the lowest floor, and then I came down, like, you know, and how is this going? You know. Yeah. And then he said something that I think was quite important. For me, this is going great. Ultimately, he is very self-motivated, and basically have had teachers even in the past who basically highlighted, this is your goals for this week, and then he can manage that. But then I said, and how is it in the whole class, Oliver? For me, it's great, but I'm not sure everybody can manage to stay focused or have the discipline to be accountable for their own learning, so to speak. So this whole accountability around learning, which I think you have to have on the child, it comes to the essence right now. So have you thought about that? If is your children, are they adapting well? Do they function well in this?
Perfectly, always.
You know,
all of them.
But I think it's for some children it will be easier, and for some children they will have.
Of course, but I would say they're impatient, because they see as I said, the gap between what the digital environment they're in, socializing, and now they're. But I mean, it's what I thought about. It's two things, because research has shown that, you know, what we developed from history's beginning, like the censoring of just the reptile, or our brain protecting ourselves and sensing fear, or sensing who would be attacking me or not, or what kind of how can I fool you, or whatever sense we have inherited. So researchers that show that when you have a screen, your sensors have to work so much more, because you can't really touch upon these nuances. So after these digital meetings, the research reports show that it's taking so much more energy. Cool. So maybe that's why she's fatigued. Maybe it's not only that she's just a child wanting to play soccer and be with her friends. It's all of the energy that goes to just being a human.
Such an interesting topic. But before we proceed too long into that, let us welcome you here, Anna Felländer.
Nice to be here.
Yeah, nice and I must say I'm very glad that you can come here. You know, I think I mentioned the Nature article that you have been co-authoring, you know, so many times, and
we need to talk about that as well.
We certainly should speak about that as soon as yesterday, actually, and I mentioned that you will.
When are you going to talk? Today or some other day?
No, with you. That's why we need 2 hours, because we have so many topics we want to.
We'll see if we get there. We'll probably.
And we're just hanging out and drinking some Sparkling.
Bubbly. Yeah. And of course bubbly because Goran is turning 40 tomorrow. Nice one, Goran. So we have jumped beyond the beer to the bubbly today.
So it's many reasons to be happy today. For one, to have you here. Secondly, to have Goran turning a bit not as young but still young. Younger, yeah, maybe. And also it's the season opening.
Yeah, season opening
in this year, which
is second season now.
Second season. Yeah. It's awesome. But perhaps we should start with a quick background. For people that don't know who you are, how would you describe yourself?
So I'm an economist from Stockholm School of Economics, and I find my path be very driven by curiosity. And I was standing cooking dinner yesterday, and I remember it's something about turning 40 and the years after that, reflecting on your childhood.
Goran is the youngest person here, I think.
Yeah, so we're like, let us tell you about aging.
What did you say before? Finally, he can now life start, right? When you heard he turning 40.
Exhaling. Anyway, so I was thinking about what, when girls are in teenage groups and they go out and party, and there was this girl being pretty annoyed at me because she was always annoyed because I always asked questions. It's like, what is it about you that makes you want to figure that out or know that? It was in a bad way. So I was like, but it's a stubbornness, because then being so old, I reflect on my career. There is a red thread. So Stockholm School of Economics, homogeneous.
Yes.
So I wanted to be in the border between politics and economy. So political economy, that's like, I found my topic. I studied in the US, found a passion for that. And then when I started the Ministry of Finance, I was actually put on task that made me detect where models and forecasting methods didn't capture things. So super early, I had like the lens of screening things for what was not seen behind the surface. And then the financial crisis burst. So I was sitting just before the crisis at the...
what year was this approximately?
2007, 8, 9?
Yeah. No, 2008. And we were sitting with the macroeconomic forecasting tools, and we were programming and using those different tools to help us forecast more. And there were not even intuitively someone saying that there's something wrong here. So then the bubble burst. And then...
let me just double check. At this time you were working in the Swedish Ministry of Finance? Or?
Yes, so I've been working there then for 8 years.
Yep.
And then I was sent because due to the tsunami and the way that the Swedish government handled crisis, they put the Crisis Management Coordination Office just below the Prime Minister, and that was Reinfeldt. I started the Ministry of Finance at Per Nuder. So no, sorry, Bosse Ringholm. And then Per Nuder, and then Anders Borg.
Yeah.
But anyway, they put the Crisis Management Coordination Office just straight under Reinfeldt's office.
All right.
And the financial crisis, so the crisis management, they didn't know how to handle like economic and financial crisis. So the TED spreads were unknown, whether that was indicating what. So it was like a learning curve for them. Anyway, so I was at the Crisis Management Coordination Office, and investigating and stress testing the Swedish bank in the Baltic states, because a devaluation would need actually that the Swedish bank would go bankrupt. But anyway, there was a security aspect of it. So when it comes to the analysis, it was from a security and geopolitical point of view, combined with the economic and the financial analysis. So I've been, there's two things that so far was in the red thread: finding what was not seen and being in the borderline of gray areas between two
domains.
Domains, yeah.
Finance and politics.
Right, and then I was interested in the banks, because I worked for the Swedish government in 10 years, so I was curious at and I stress tested the banks. So the banks were kind of.
And what do you mean stress testing? Can you just elaborate a bit more what that means?
Oh, so that would be like, what if the currency would devaluate that much? What would that mean in terms of income and EBITDA? Like all the financial terms, you stress test from what if unemployment for a government? What if employment would rise this much? And when the income stress different scenarios to see if the balance sheet holds.
Right. And you had like simulations of that, or did you actually interact with the banks directly in some way, or how did you do the stress test?
The stress test, that is Finansinspektionen.
Yeah.
But you also have to stress test for other not traditional scenarios, and that's why you have to think broader.
Yeah.
But I didn't stress test the bank by myself, but it's the way that you read you read the banks and you read the stress test, and you apply a more broader area to it. Anyway, so I started at Swedbank, and then a couple of years then I was head of macro research and then chief economist, and what I found there was
this is 2012-ish, or what year
this is 2014 maybe.
14.
And then working at having the position, I was really privileged. That was Mickey Wolf and his team seeing the importance of broadening the bank's macro analysis. So So when you're at a bank, I was sitting at the trading floor, and then you have all these men using the analysts.
Did you say men deliberately, saying it's not women there, or what do you mean?
No, it's very male dominated. Yeah. And so you would have the traders with client accounts. Bringing some of the analysts to them to make them want to somehow invest or buy or trade. And then the only thing that the analysts were giving the clients were the cyclical movements.
Right, periodical trends in some way.
Yeah. And then what I realized that there's something happening under the surface. So there's structural changes. And the structure, globalization had been going on, and urbanization had been going on, but digitalization was something that, we'd had the digitalization and robotization. That was kind of something that we kind of closed the box and just.
You didn't really take those considerations into the macro models.
Exactly, it was something happening, and it wasn't much of.
So the feeling is under the surface there is something huge going on, and we are not really looking at it when we are doing analysis.
Right, but I saw it was affecting the macroeconomic terms, because inflation, when you measure inflation, you measure per unit cost, and the way that Spotify did their business model is subscription. So you didn't capture productivity, and you didn't capture the price pressure downwards.
So all of a sudden, with new business models that are not captured in the old models, because it's a subscription model, under the surface there's something else going on.
Right. So, but that was just an example, and I did a productivity because I said, well, if we don't measure productivity the way we should, then we're not handling the monitoring, especially or the fiscal policy in the right way. So we kind of create a lot of inequalities in macroeconomic terms then. So I really did the unconventional thing with just being close to the startup scene and being early advisor to the government in these issues, but also engaging in research, because that was the only, like, I didn't get the research team were on the cyclical. So I stood there and I just, there was so much fun going on and I wanted to research. So I reached out to the academy or the universities, and that it was really fun to be in all of these different buckets, like government policy, startups, and the bank was transforming also with new regulation and partnership and being innovative in a really silos environment and testing that out, and then the large company trying to not be a commodity provider by the end of the day, having large loans on their balance sheet. Am I boring you?
No, I'm thinking about the next topic, so that's why I'm very eager to interrupt you.
I mean, you have to tell me if I'm boring you. If this was like a social event, which is it, you could be like, I just need to go to the restrooms. I'll see you. But now you're stuck
Certainly
with me.
not, no, because I'm biting my tongue not to interrupt you. That's why.
But that's great.
I'm writing it up so I can bring it up later.
Can I just
yes,
close my red thread in my career
yes,
so we can start talking about the things you want to talk about? But then, so that's like the thing that I wanted to measure what was not measured. And I wanted to see what was not captured with traditional tools and methods. Yeah. Then, where I'm at now, then I was affiliated to the Royal Institute of Technology, and I was still advising the government. I went into some AI startup boards, and then I was also a senior advisor at Boston Consulting Group.
Right. Yeah. That's an interesting group to speak about.
That's so interesting because, like, it's funny how you would drive the AI ethics in a consultancy firm.
But what's the connection now? Because you work with this, and how do you now make the connection from the bank and this red thread to how did you get into AI, and how do you get AI into?
Perfect.
Why do you start this?
Yeah, because it was something that I was like again halting. Like the coin of AI, when you just do the tech side of the coin and you kind of rush into seductive profits. It's like the trade-off between accuracy and explainability. So it's just the corridors. And this is, I want to talk about an anecdote, but it's so important to me because this is where, like, that's crazy where I get some energy because I was going, I have this affiliation at KTH. I know that the AI ethic topics was I read about it and I studied it, and I had this feeling that, because my affiliation was, I think I was the first macroeconomist at KTH, so I was kind of questions because my
and which part of KTH was that?
So it was Matti Carli, so industrial economy, but I was very close to Danicha's group. So Danicha really, she really included me in her group. So with that group, I kind of tested my developed pitfalls. So I said, hey, this is where you guys think there's bias, there's machine bias and data bias. But what if you look at it from this perspective? What would the pitfalls be then? And then I stress tested them, but I kind of vetted them with Danicha's team. And then I went to present this And then a larger group of AI professors, highly prestigious, were sitting around the table. And I was super enthusiastic because I thought it's so good that we can start talking about transparency. Oh, again, sorry. The corridors of the AI professors were suddenly just clogged, and investors were they had money, they have attention, and so they didn't want to know anything about their accountability in their research or how to make it transparent. So
it sounds like someone coming in and asking uncomfortable questions.
Very uncomfortable. And also because like saying that I would come from a bank, that's saying like my passion lies in the borderlines, and I don't want to be defined by anything. Or a mother I want to be defined as. But so they were, I triggered something in them that was so, it was so obvious that I touched a point.
A raw nerve.
The same day I went, this was in October 2016, Google's DeepMind just opened their first ethical and societal unit, they called it. Her name was Brittany Smith, and she just opened this and launched this. I went to her, and I wanted to have an hour with her. I got an hour. I presented the pitfalls, and I looked at her face, and I said, and I realized, because they had the Open AI initiative, and they had everything, and they claimed to do fair AI. And I realized they hadn't done the work that we've done, that I've initiated. Right. So then the way that I categorize it and talked about it from a more systematic approach, I'm onto something. And then everything just rolled. And like a year after, everyone talked about AI ethics. So being that curious and itching something on someone that is uncomfortable.
But I just want to understand, when was the first interaction that when you started getting into the rabbit hole of AI? Because here is a little bit like we have now rolled forward to, you have almost systematically thought we need to think about and talk about bias. But do you remember, as an anecdote, what is your first experience and trying to lift? When was the first time you lifted the hood and started looking into AI and this topic? Because now you explained what had been bubbling in your head in terms of systematically thinking about bias and ethics and stuff like that. But what got you on the train the very, very first time? Do you remember that? When did AI come?
Because I knew it would be the next general purpose technology.
Because it came from this your conversation.
Economic
yes, but it would not have come, if I understand what you said, because you were in your traders were following the cyclical approach, and you said this is something else. I need to follow other structural
behavior,
fundamental underlying drivers here. Yeah. And I see the startup scene now. There's things here that I can get a better understanding for fundamental new drivers that is not captured here. So I guess entering into the startup scene, you see, oh, this is a general technology like no one else that is popping up. I'm just assuming now. Is that how it worked? Is it in entering into the startup scene, finding AI tech, so to speak, here, or when did you get on the AI fundamental? When did you realize that this was the next general technology? Because that is not open to everyone in 2016.
It's like, what would be, if you look at general purpose technology, what is becoming or the other way around? What is it that is this drastically reduced cost of? So I always come from the macroeconomic perspective. Predictions.
So with your macro head on,
always that.
Then you look now at the new tech, and then you saw, holy shit, this type of tech will have fundamental, huge impact.
Yeah, and also zero marginal cost. If you read that book early on, because I was deep into the sharing economy and the business model there, and exploring the labor market and wage creation, how that would be, the Swedish welfare model, how that would be challenged and stuff. So I always looked at it from a pricing, and that when we come into the report, the distribution between capital and labor and how that polarizes a society.
And then here you see a general technology that will have impact on these fundamentals. Is that how?
Right. So if you asked me, and then when I said that, what is it with this that is drastically reduced cost of? That's where I started, and that's what I realized, that this is going to change everything. Yeah. This is going to change This is the new general purpose technology, and there are 3 ways.
Was this with Danica, or when did
before?
This happen?
Exactly. What is the trigger that you? Because we.
Can I stop you for a second, sir? Can somebody explain who is Danica?
Yeah, who is Danica, and what is drastically reduced cost? I mean, I think there are things that I'm not an economist in that way, so I think it's you have a background which are extremely interesting because you have another hat on when you start looking at this. But I don't really understand. I'm not really understanding what is drastically reduce cost. For you, maybe it's obvious.
No, but I think this is another topic that we could mention, because I wrote, the prediction machine and AIAW and actually speak about these things and drastically reducing costs. So I think this is a topic we should dig deeper into soon.
This is huge, because people don't get this.
We need to explain what this means, but I think we can do that shortly. But just to answer your question, who is Danica? Do you want to take it, or should I give a quick intro?
Danica Kragic. She's an AI professor at...
Everyone knows her, right?
She's a star.
I know who is Danica.
She's a star. I mean, she also has a wonderful personality, and she's a style icon of the whole entire nation.
I think she's one of the senior top professors in KTH.
Yeah, she's actually one of the top researchers in Sweden, I would say.
Yeah. And what is her field?
AI.
robotics.
Robotics.
Perhaps more robotics.
Robotics. Yeah. But you know what you have to, when being in this, being in coming to academia, there's a lot of. So I'm going to step on someone's toes now.
Please do.
There's a lot of prestige, and Danica is the most brilliant and has no prestige. So she's like fearless. She doesn't care. That's why she's so brilliant. That's like turning 40.
Now you don't need to care anymore.
You lose all your prestige now.
But she's so brilliant, and she doesn't want to play the game of the protectionist culture at university. I know one is listeing, right? So I'm lucky we're just
You're lucky
alone.
There's no one listening. That's good.
No, but she is a remarkable woman and professor.
Yeah, for sure.
But we can park it. But I think this whole dimension of reduction of cost, which is actually quite pivotal, fundamental understanding, is something that. What is that, and what do we mean with that? Because I think the more people understand the underlying fundamenta why AI is so huge, it will help the normal companies that hasn't get on the train yet, that hasn't really connected with this yet, why they need to do it.
But let's take that as the next topic then. But let's finish perhaps your background.
Yeah.
You mentioned a number of things you moved into. You worked in Swedbank, you moved to KTH as well, and worked with them. And let's not move perhaps fully into the AI sustainability part. We can take that as a separate topic as well. Of course, how that got started and why. Anything else that you'd like to bring up except those things before we proceed perhaps to the next topic?
About my background?
Yeah, your background. Something that you're missing.
That's shaping you. What that has shaped you, sort of thing.
Yeah, like a magnet to what is maybe uncomfortable, because I try to be in situations where outside my comfort zone, and that's why would I do that? It's like I've never been in a laid back exhaling position, so I kind of seek for where it's like
awesome. I like that.
You want the rush.
This is like a coach session.
Cool. You can move it as long as you want to sit back. So just, cool. Let's move into. We've been speaking about the prediction machine now and the reduction of cost and everything, and I think it's natural to just talk a bit more about that, if it's okay with you. And I can just give a bit about my background, and when I speak about this topic, because I do that a lot, and I use that as like an introduction on why AI will have as big impact on society as it will. And I'm not an economist, but you are. And I try to portray a role of understanding economy, but I don't. But that makes it extra interesting for me to ask you what your view is about his book, AIAW, The Prediction Machine, and what he says. So let me give a bit of an intro, what I usually say, and please let me know what how horribly wrong I am, and what's the correct view of doing this. And when there is this book called The Prediction Machine by this person called AIAW, and I think he's a professor originally in an economy, but I think these days he calls himself a professor in AI. But he basically said what you just said, that you can notice you have these kind of big technological disruptions happening. And AI is one of them, and the biggest one right now. And we had other ones in the past, like the internet or the transistor, that completely transformed the society in different ways. And he said, at least, if I quote him correctly, that it's easy for an economist to identify what the technological disruption is. It is really when the cost of something drastically drops. Then you will see a big change in what jobs we have at this time and new jobs being created. And he said that for the transistor, leading up to all the computers that we have in use today. He said it for the internet, which was, if I remember correctly, the cost of distributing information and products and services, which changed the jobs that we had at that time, mid-90s and forward. Yeah. And created new jobs we've never seen before. And now he said, for AI, it will be, as you just said, predictions. And once again, we will see the cost of making predictions drastically drop, and that will change the jobs we have and create new type of jobs. So, okay, so far, what all of I've said, do you disagree with it, or would you agree with it?
Would you frame it in another way?
No, it's just I want to talk about predictions, and I want to talk about that filter bubble of predictions, because you cannot predict what hasn't happened, and you cannot be creative yet in that sphere. So would we have been able to predict COVID-19?
Yeah.
Well, probably not, but we would be super good at predicting COVID-21 or 20. Yet the problem is that all our work to predict the crisis just left will make us blind to what will happen on other areas. And I think this crisis, the focus and the neglection of everything else that is happening, and the children in society, they will stand us and hold us accountable for acting the way we do. So there are three things with prediction models and recommendation and filtering bubbles. It's the COVID and the ability to create misinformation or disinformation. We have half a nation thinking that there was cheating in the US election. And we also have thoughts and insights that are actually based on sourceless or false sources on social media. So how is these two crises or events that we have today affected by AI on social platforms, and how will AI solve these problems?
Solve or help or perhaps hinder? I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, so when it comes to crisis management and predicting how to stand ready for a new crisis, we have to learn from the insights from how we react with a crisis. So our behavior when we're stressed, that we can learn. We can also learn the behavior of consumer patterns or investing patterns when we're stressed, when there's a demand and supply shock. And when it comes to the whole this misinformation filter bubbles spurring Trump defenders or advocates, there has to be an ethical filter on media, and also the social media platforms has to take responsibility, and it goes from children porn to CNN news. It goes all the way. How can we assure that someone is standing accountable? So it's not a wild west. It is something that we can steer and say, we can use AI for this, and we can not use AI for that. And if you have the platform and the data and the algorithms within your universe, you have the accountability to do it fair. Otherwise, you will be standard accountable in court. So the same time, so we're actually initiating a project with the Gender Equality Agency in Sweden, and coming just from a meeting with them, the time that you detect misfunction when it comes to fairness, you are awake. And once awake, you can change it in the positive directions. Once we, as both business leaders, researchers, realize that we have the power to do the good things and to actually amplify the work for achieving gender equal goals, that will empower us. And because now we're asleep, we've been asleep for so long. The Cambridge Analytica, we're like, okay, then we went to sleep again. And it's kind of the accountability awakeness for business leaders. And I don't think it's the coders that will have the revolution, because if you think about the traditional business model, you have the asset and the debt side, and the income and the cost, and that AI can push down the cost, so you can reduce oil spill in the value chain and do everything super efficient, very capital biased. Then on the income side, you can create really deep and tailored and customized client relations, and really game on dopamine, where you are most what do you call it? When you're most proponed. Is that an English word?
Proponed, I think you can say that.
No, you're most
inclined.
Huh?
Inclined
to consume. So you lose your autonomy here in that gaming with your dopamine. The business model is on speed, right? There's no way, if you target the algorithm towards this, there will be a business model on speed and seductive profits. But there's a new type of pollution coming out of these new business models. And this dark cloud of pollution, that's what we haven't accounted for in today's business models. So
let me see if I understand you correctly there, just to quickly interrupt you at least, because it's also one of my favorite topics, which I have a close friend of mine who is called Matthias, and he's a professor in circular economy, and he tries to get away from this kind of traditional linear type of make, take and waste, type of economy. You make a new iPhone every second year and you buy a new one and you throw it away. And instead of moving towards a more sharing economy where you don't actually perhaps own as much, and instead, buy a function rather than a product and a service, could lead to completely new incentives. This would be a topic I'd love to explore with you. Do you see what I mean with that? Or
exactly, and I love it. Let us can I just I would love to, Anders, just hold your thoughts, because I would want to go again from an economist's point of view. When I did the what are we not capturing with traditional macroeconomic models from digitalization, the productivity gains we were not capturing, that was a positive externality. If you know that term, positive externality.
I don't.
So there is a value that is the willingness to pay for the service or product is higher. So it's kind of a free. It's a market failure, but it's something that you. So a very good example is that you have, if you've if you have deklarerat, if you declared your
income declaration,
or tax declaration, or if you shopped online or did your bank errands digitally, you know that you gained a lot of time, right? You gain a lot of leisure time in
compared to do it manually.
Right. Yeah. And leisure time is not part of any official statistics, but you know that it has a value for you. So you can't buy your leisure, well you can, but I mean that is a positive externality that you gain.
There's a positive externality I gain, so you can make a business model out of that, and it doesn't really follow the old model, so to speak.
Well, you could make a business model of it by pricing it, but you don't. Like so that was the research project at Swedbank. So what if Swish? We pay nothing for Swish, right?
And but now we couldn't live without it.
No, but we're hooked into the ecosystem that someone is capitalizing on it.
Yeah.
But so there's no thing as a free lunch. But I wanted to explain to you what a positive externality is. What I'm saying is a negative externality is the pollution coming out
of these business models.
Of this business model. So it's like, it's great. We're just flourishing here business-wise, and we are just, having this high...
Yeah, but this pollution is super important, and we have the Netflix movie Social Dilemma and stuff like that, where we highlight, I mean, like we do, they get our data, we give it freely because we feel that we want to have this service of Facebook. We don't truly understand the model. And now 2, 3, 4, 10 years into it, people have started to realize that you can use these social media models for purposes they were not intended for, and all of a sudden we have pollution in terms of a division of people's, no one can get a common view because everybody get the personalized view. So there are a lot of impacts that has happened that I don't think anyone could foresee. Is that what you mean with the pollution?
Yeah, but that's what we do. That's the AI Sustainability Center. Yeah. So we categorize this dark cloud of pollution. We said, okay, these are the pitfalls, and this is how we use our tools and framework to solve it. And it's going from theory to practice, and it's taking theory and having it from another multidisciplinary lens, and it's taking it from bottom up. So no one can say, so all these tech giants saying we're doing fair AI. Okay, so what does that mean? How do you code gender equality within your organization in every AI innovation that you put on the market? So no one can answer that. So you have to start with a systematic approach to this dark cloud and base it on how can we solve it. And when I say, when you're there and you realize that you identified
a problem,
the faultiness,
then your eyes are open.
You can turn it into something that will make your brand be extremely competitive and on the market, and create the trust that you will, because you want people to have autonomy to opt in because they want to. Can I opt out? So I'm not on Facebook. I'm not on Instagram.
Oh, no.
And I'm missing. I don't care the parties I'm missing out. No, actually, I'm not getting invited. So I don't miss being disappointed. Let us put it that way now. But what if my children's school dialogue was happening on Facebook? Yeah. So what does that mean for people who want to opt out? What does that mean for people who doesn't have a bank ID or not? But could we? Now we have to. Sorry, I'm so sorry.
No, but we should try to structure a bit the discussion, because it's so many interesting different things you have brought up already. And one thing that I think we should speak a bit more about is this kind of make, take, waste kind of, and a circular economy and self-function topic. I think that's interesting. We mentioned social media and the filter bubble, and how AI potentially can be a positive or negative impact on that, just as sustainability goals. I think that's another topic that we could try to dig deeper into.
Going from the dark cloud, understanding it and turning it into a positive, doing this as a competitive
positive or
edge.
negative, we don't know.
It's like an awakening, and I know, and I'm certain that the accountability around this will just make us, because you have to choose. And the thing is that the ethical, it's not a red wine discussion. So once you are there in top management and say, this is what we say is sustainable consumer credit, you have to point, it's binary, you have to point it down. What is it for a woman in my age to nudge on my dopamine and my vanity? And also talking about gender, what if you're not your sex is neither male or female?
Cool.
Exactly.
But and we also mentioned, the AI Sustainability Center a number of times now.
Yeah, we haven't
really introduced it. So
but
perhaps
and one more topic used to laying it out there. Yeah. What the hell is ethics?
Yeah.
What the hell is ethics?
I write that down. What the hell is ethics? Okay.
Because
but wait with that for a second.
We wait with that. So I want to talk about everything. like a kid in a candy store.
10 minutes each.
10 minutes. I mean,
okay.
This is why it takes 2 hours.
Yeah.
Because when you get the Pandora's box
I want to
open,
be here 4 hours.
When you get the Pandora's box open.
But before we move it, let's start
Anna,
to make sure that we actually capture, the Sustainability Center.
Just for a joke, before we get started, the best show is the afterward when the cameras are closed. So we've been sitting here till 12 a couple of times.
And my kids are home alone, so I can't. I wish.
I'm sorry.
Anyway, let's do it a bit more structured and
Please,
try to
you
find...
lead it.
No.
No, try to.
Give it to me.
Please.
Anna, what is the AI Sustainability Center? Why did it get started, and how did you do it?
AI Sustainability Center, it's ensuring that we embrace AI and create AI innovations that human can trust.
Inventions that human can trust. Awesome.
Okay, going back, I can't help taking this macroeconomic filter. At this time, we are dependent on innovations for productivity growth.
Yes.
Right?
Indeed.
So we draw on the fruit of the old businesses, the dinosaurs.
Now we need to go first principles, reinvent our businesses.
So what will be the ingredients in all the innovations? AI, right? Data-driven technologies and AI. So whenever you want to innovate, the topic of ethics will have to be on the top of your agenda, because it has to, and it should, and be to your advantage, be forced to make a stand, put down the flag. So what side do you want to be in? Do you want to be asleep, or do you want to take action for steering AI in a world that is better for your consumers and environment and society?
So but let's perhaps start with the history as well. How did it get started? For people that don't even know what it is.
So it was me and Fredrik Heinz and Stefan Larsson who was sitting and scoping this project. And Stefan Larsson is coming from the law and societal perspective on technology.
And he was at this point where?
Lunds Tekniska Universitet. He still is, but he's affiliated to this.
And Heinz was at? Linköping, yeah.
And he still is. So.
And what faculties? Are they all AI guys, or are they from are we multidisciplinary from the beginning?
Yeah, so Fredrik Heinz is an AI researcher with a focus on AI ethics.
I know him well. Actually, did a PhD at the same time as I.
It's just for whoever is listening might not know.
Right, and he's on the high level, the EU high level group on trustworthy AI.
Yeah, and he's in several AI Sweden and etc. etc.
Yeah.
And then the other guy,
Larsson,
Stefan.
and he's also in the borderline. He's one of the best AI ethics researcher we have, because he has angle of the legal angle, but the socio-technical angle as well. So the three of us.
So you're coming from slightly AI ethic is the core center of research, but we are coming into it from slightly different angles here.
Yeah, and that's the way. That's the way. So we did it. We said it's a Nordic approach with Nordic values, and the approach goes like it's multidisciplinary and you collaborate. That's the Nordic way of doing it. But the Nordic values are also something that we take for granted. So we want fairness, we want integrity, we want autonomy, we want
solidarity, maybe even stuff
information.
Like
yeah, but we are dedicated to not compromising on this, and we combine it with sustainable business models. So we are the USP here. We are considered extremely well doing business and ethics. So that's where we started. So we brought in also companies who understood that this is a movement that is about to be created, and we're a one-stop shop for AI and ethics. We do research, we do consultancy with scalable tools that is unique in their design because they are designed in a multidisciplinary, cross-functional.
The way they came about is quite unique.
Yeah, but it's also how you apply. It's also how you apply them. You apply them to activate different roles in an organization. So you're being a bit uncomfortable here in our organization, but you awake them. And then we have use cases, so we have a framework, methodology, and strategies, and we have like a smorgasbord of offerings now, how we can audit, how we can come in as an AI ethical board, and how we can use our framework to make their products and innovations market ready for AI solutions humans can trust. So we work with. So sometimes it's like you come into different perspective. The best sell-in is that you work with the CEO, because this person he or she will be accountable, and the CEOs that really understand this has a way of letting us come into an organization with a mandate to actually engage everyone. And then sometimes we engage with the marketing and communication management, because he or she knows that when something happens, when the shit hits the fan, it will be on
hurt my brand.
Yes. And then we have the legal, and that's why you talked about what is ethics. And I mean, everything in every law, every regulation starts with an ethical approach, and it's the borderline between ethics. And in this point, we focus on the borderline between GDPR and ethics, and how they interact, and how you can find this space of comfortability with your own values in this. And then we have the tech people are the ones that are in the large organizations, are the ones that sometimes say, no, we got this. And then it's like, yeah, you got it from your perspective, right? You know when you need to be transparent at your desires on what you want. And once you scale, you can't have the view over it. So sometimes it's the CEO doesn't know what's going on in the tech department. That is like a black box.
So how would you define the vision of AI Sustainability Center?
Oh, the vision. We're going to be a world-leading hub for AI ethics and tools for organizations to realize that they are steering AI and not the other way around.
Awesome, I like it.
That's a good one.
Steering,
not steer AI, not being steered by the AI.
Yeah, but you know I dream about the people in position to change the world when they are awake and like, oh, okay. Like once we decide on what we think is fair and can communicate that and be accountable for that, there's a lot of stuff that we can do good. There's a lot of damage we can just dodge.
And to use the allegory of the cave from Plato, enlightenment, who has walked out of the cave and seen the light. In your conversations with businesses now, do people are they awake yet? Have they seen it yet? Or is it something that is still a buzzword that we kind of know is important for us, someone, because I can read all the articles? Or have they walked out of the cave yet?
No, but see, that's not what I say is awake. Awake is then when you realize your accountability. Because everyone, if you ask someone, every business leader would take 2 hours with us talking about AI ethics. So interesting. So, but we don't do AI.
Exactly.
Or
then you haven't. For me, if you know Plato's cave, you see the world as shadows projected at the back of the cave. So you think a horse is black and white, flat, as you see a horse as a shadow, right? And then someone walks you out of the cave and puts you in bright sunlight. You get burnt in your eyes, and now you see actually a horse is in 3D and in colors. So basically, when I hear someone, oh, this is so interesting with AI,
they're not awake.
And they are still in the cave.
Yeah, but that's important to me. So I forgot that metaphor. I love
Plato's allegory. Actually, on Data Innovation Summit, I started before, and you was the first keynote speaker. I used the Plato's allegory to talk about enlightening. To truly understand data and AI and how you need to change your company, you actually need to demystify it and understand it. You need to do the hard yards to get out of the cave, to look at it in a new perspective.
But the beauty of it, first you get frightened because you understand the harm it can create, and then you get overwhelmed by your accountability, and then you see the light of what you can do good.
Yeah,
that's being awake.
And Plato would say, first, when you walk out of the cave, you get pain in your eyes and you get blinded because you're looking straight into the sunlight. Your eyes needs to adjust. And by now you can see it clearly. The problem is when you're trying to go back to the cave and explain to your friends what you now have understood, you have no dark vision left. So all of a sudden, when you've seen the light, you are actually from a different perspective on everything you talk about. So that's the pain you're talking about. Plato, you read. Sorry for going down that path.
I love
philosophical discussions.
You're reminding me of what I already know.
It would be fun to just dig deeper into what ethics really is, and I know good definitions of that, which is hard. But before we perhaps move into that, what's next up for AI Sustainability Center? Do you have any plans ahead?
Yeah.
Lots, I guess.
It's so a new CEO.
Cool.
It's gonna become public Monday.
Why can't we have a scoop? Can we have a scoop here?
So there's going to be clearer buckets of who we are, what we do, and why. And it's going to be one bucket that is research, the other one clear consultancy with the tools that is going to be unique and scalable. And then there's going to be outreach. Then there's going to be the movement. Then we're going to create a sense of awakeness here. You know what I want to talk about?
Please, what do you want to talk about?
Because do you know Brené Brown?
I don't.
No, I can't say that.
Well, I think she is very, her language goes straight to the heart of a 40-plus woman. She says that, there's you call it the stage, or like the ringen. How do you call the
circle?
No, the circle. Like when you're boxing, you're in a boxing.
You're going to the boxing into the ring. You go into the ring. Yeah. Boxing ring.
And then there's this audience. And having been down in the ring, and seen being hurt and being pushed down and stood up again and being laughed at and being praised, and everything you do when you put yourself in the ring, you're kind of out there. You're saying, "Here I am," and you take a risk, right? And she says, feedback. I don't take any feedback from people sitting in the audience, but I do take feedback as a proof of engagement and love for someone else in the ring. Like I will not let myself be praised or doomed by the audience, because you have to be in the ring. And I don't know why I know exactly why I talk about this, because as I talked about where we need innovation to thrive or to drive productivity, there's a lot of risk to be taken, and there's a lot of shame in your dreams that you want to avoid. But this is the time for risk. And what do we need to be able to create a society that takes risk? Well, we need our welfare system. But we also need an forgiving norm, and we need the arms that are not robot arms, but physical arms to catch us when we fall.
Safety net.
So the human touch and the human aspects of life in this AI era is going to become even more important than ever, because it's going to be a polarized world. It is. We can come to the article of in the Nature Communications.
Why do you think it's going to be increasingly polarized, so to speak? In the world.
Between countries and within countries. So it's obvious.
AI divide. Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, because it's the human. So again, the divide between capital and labor. So you say that AI and machines, that everything is easy to predict in as a component of a skill of a job task is going to be subsidized. That's a no-leaning point. But the things that we don't, that will be priced extremely higher. So again, I wanna. You asked when I came in here, you said, can we talk about something you thought of today? And today I thought about the mix between the fiscal and the monetary policy in this corona crisis, and what's going to happen afterwards. And we talked about afterwards what we're going to think about when we were focusing on elderly and kind of neglected the young people and other persons that with needs. But also how we manage this crisis, because with the risks, if you take risk today, you're kind of punished, right? Economically wise. But in this pandemic, you're punished twice by taking risk and being an entrepreneur. So the financial markets are they're very influenced by monetary policies, saying every central bank in the world say we're going to intervene on the fiscal markets for how long it needs and with so much it needs. So that pushes the cost for money down. So that makes it very preferable to own real estate and to own stocks. Yeah, and to money is also very cheap. So the people that own stuff is going to be richer. The people that don't own stuff, but one good thing is also, so the interest rates, they're pushed down, and that makes the house bubble crash not occurring at this moment. So then we have the other part. That's the fiscal policy. So that's the government interventions. So they say, we're going to actually intervene here. This is a crisis package. So the dinosaurs, such as that doesn't create as much as we need for productivity. I said that innovation and risk is what we need to spur productivity. They get a lot of packages. So we're upholding businesses that maybe is in a natural environments are fading out, but we're missing entrepreneurs by saying that the support for the people that you temporarily lay off, it's actually not being paid out in time. It's an administrative process. So the ones that are taking risks are punished.
But this is
twice.
This is huge because right now, in order to get any out of these fiscal interventions, you kind of need to be one of the big, heavy industries in Sweden where you have a certain profile of assets and a lot of staff, a quite analog business model. And in order to, the way it's been set up, you can then do this time layoff and all that kind of stuff. And you need to be of a quite huge size in order to be able to operate and manage this. Whilst what is really going to drive Sweden forward, the entrepreneurs, the innovators.
The ones taking risks.
The ones taking risks. There is no package. There's no package.
I have to disagree with all of you there because I believe that Sweden has done quite good with this. I'm a small entrepreneur.
Yeah, how much package did you be able to? We've talked about this off camera.
They were very fast in creating packages for small companies. So now, if you have enskild bolag,
did you take one, Warren?
No,
why not? You are in the most hurt. You in one of the most hurt industries, the event industry, if any.
No, but we were lucky last year. We were being very lucky to survive. So there are many other companies that wouldn't, and I think that the package came in May already. So I think that if we are talking about from entrepreneur side, I think that I slightly disagree on this. I think that we reacted quite quickly, but you're right when it comes to by June last year there were around 17,000 unemployed people that were working in the hotel and event branch that went out, and these people. Our customer was working for them and etc. So yes, they have been punished twice, but I believe that the government still reacted quite quickly. I have to say. I have to defend it because I
disagree with you here because I see.
I disagree so much with you.
Good. Finally, we get something.
because for me, working in a large corporation. On a daily basis, it was a given that they needed to work with these fiscal policies because it's a good management opportunity. You need to take it.
I partly agree with Gordon here, but let's Anna.
So what it does also, it is punishing women. So women is working in service, low-skilled areas in a relatively more. Degree than men. So when women are the poor and women are being punished.
Yeah. So gender inequality here, who is getting hurt the most, so to speak, in this crisis, for sure. Yeah, that I think we can agree with.
And what is the problem? Is the way the packages has been made out, because I actually agree with you, Anna, that I think it is helping old business models, and it works because we understood old business models, so we could shape a package because we understood this. We don't understand the new stuff, so we don't know how to shape a package that works for an entrepreneur. That's how I understand the problem. But they want to, but they don't have the know-how. If I'm nice. Or why wouldn't we try to help our entrepreneurs?
So what's happening, if you look at indicators, you would say, okay, so there's a growing service industry in Sweden, and we see that like people that own stock or own their real estate, well, they have a good time now. They're not that affected by the crisis. They still have the job. Their house is increasing in value, and the stock market's ticking up.
Money is cheap, so people keep buying houses.
Again, since I worked at the Ministry of Finance and I looked at all of these indicators, I know that would signal a forecast that says it's okay. So when it's more alarming, and when you actually go deeper behind the surface, you see that this is increasing. The way the mix between fiscal and monetary policy is hurting the less educated and the ones that are not owning and are in low-skilled service sectors. So
would you argue that?
And amorteringskravet, it's another way of just serving that everyone. It's not first it was only for the unemployed. No, everyone should get it. I don't want to be political here, but what I know is that we have to have a welfare system that is protecting people taking risks. And I mean, when I was asked or interviewed about the sharing economy, and in Sweden is a great country. We are. I mean, people complaining. Well, where else would you want to
live?
live than in Sweden, but the welfare system and how the gig economy is exploding, and how they're actually under the lowest wage, and how they are evaluated on every task they do. And that's, for me, working in different parts of, like startup, big companies, and university, and then the government. It's like, welcome to entrepreneurship. You're being evaluated every single minute, and you're taking risks, and that's why I think that the policy is just that the labor market policy also based upon the dinosaurs. So we have to look at what is a security net based on the gig economy and the people taking risk. How can we secure that? And to secure...
Yeah, I mean, I agree with both kind of arguments, I would say. And I can certainly see that Corona has caused a lot of issues. For one, it's like we're going a bit back to the law of the jungle. Only the strongest survives. And if you don't have a safety net as a company or as a person, you will get hurt in some way. And that's really sad, of course. But on the other hand, you can also watch, if you would view more on an AI point of view, Corona has forced digitalization to a degree we've never seen in the past. Right?
Love it. It's fast tracking. But then the risks we're more exposed to the ethical risks then. So we have to work with ethical filters even more now.
I mean, I think it was the Minister of Education in Sweden that said basically, like in May or something, 2020, I said this year, but last year then, like 3 months of Corona has accelerated digitalization more than 5 years.
Yeah.
And it's kind of it's good in some sense, but it could also lead to ethical implications and consequences that we don't.
We've had to put things in place that we haven't really understood fully what it means.
Right.
And just to finish my point as well, I think also it's been building up like a need for doing more investments. So I think actually in terms of VC capital, there is actually more available today than for a long time, which could help a lot of startups getting funding potentially. So there are also these kind of positive side effects.
Of course.
Right?
Of course.
Yeah, good. Okay.
But we mean, like, maybe I'm going down another rabbit hole, sorry, Anders. Yeah. Because, we have talked a lot about what we talk about, and we've used the terminology, the AI divide. So we've talked about the digital divide and all that kind of stuff. But we have also seen, if you work in the industry and you truly work on the tech side and all that, you see this problem that we have a divide now. You can look at it on country level, but you can even look at it on actually, it's a couple of fundamental tech giants that are so far ahead in their AI industrialization and how they do things. So it's the rest of the world is playing catch up. And this is one part of what is driving polarization also, and one of my strongholds, what I'm doing as my core business, I think we will have a worse society if all disruption will come from a few tech giants. We will be a much more healthy society if we manage to disrupt ourselves and become data and AI ready ethically and all this. So here this tech AI divide to me is around this area now. We are talking about depolarization, how we need to help, and we talked about how can we invest so Europe actually gets a sustainable alternative to the US giants and all that. So there are many. I'm just going down another rabbit hole here in our after work.
I so much want to talk about that, and I want to bring up Anders' point with different incitament. Yeah. But first, I want to talk about the tech giants and the catch-22 in that, because you have the tech giants, and with all that data, they manage to transform their business into different fields. So their monopoly situation is within data, not facial recognition. So the regulators can't get them because, like, in home devices, they would say that, no, we don't. It's the data that needs to they acquire that has the monopoly situation. Yet, that's exactly what we want, because we want to hook up to every social platforms that has this huge environment. So no one wants Facebook if no one else is on it. So it's very difficult with the desire to have this monopolistic giant and to catch it with regulation. So the opt out is like, you do what you do want to, but you don't want to, and that's why the Facebook wasn't an incident that really awoke us.
I mean, the Cambridge Analytica incident, or
yeah.
Mm.
So we did not awake because we love it. And why do we love it? It's the dopamine.
Yeah.
So it's autonomy. So this is why autonomy is so important for us at the AI Sustainability Center when we claim the fairness of AI. Because I don't even know that someone is playing with my feelings. I don't even know that I am becoming vain and consumed on credit.
So I think, this, I'm biting my tongue all the time here, but okay, we have a number of topics here. One is the filter bubble, that we get the dopamine all the time. We're seeing things that agree with our personal opinion, and potentially we just dig deeper into that and keep, building up our ideas or opinions in perhaps in not a very objective way. But perhaps a bit before we jump into that rabbit hole, filter bubble.
So many rabbit holes.
They're cool. AI is cool, man. There's so many rabbit holes.
I'd just like to stay a bit to, we started to speak a bit about the AI divide, and it would be interesting to hear what you think about that. So one way to describe it is basically we can easily see today, if we look at the most valuable companies in the world, top 10 2019, it was Google, it was Amazon, it was Facebook, it was Microsoft, and it was the Chinese giants, the Alibaba, and Tencent, and Baidu, etc. So we know it's the most valuable companies, and we partly know that they've been so successful because they can make use of AI and data in a way that very, very few other companies can. And then that creates like a feedback loop that makes them more and more powerful. And in some sense, you can argue, is it good or bad? Of course, we can find many bad situations, and we can try to regulate it. And actually, the first question I'd like to ask you is about regulation when it comes to tech giants.
Yeah.
Because this is a hard question. And I know GDPR, for example, had very good intentions, but I don't think it had really good consequences in the way it was implemented. And the reason I'm saying that is that we know the tech giants, they have huge legal resources.
They know the data better than anyone else, so they also know exactly how to manage the regulation. Whilst the less mature they don't want to take the risk. I mean, like to the risk.
Let's take an example. GDPR, you have, you want to have access to your own data, or you have the right to erasure, basically saying if someone comes to Google and say, remove everything about me, they have to implement that and implement the routines to do so. And they have no problem doing that.
They know how to do it easily.
They have so much resources, they have the infrastructure, and they have the legal expertise to easily implement it.
It's mid-sized company.
I mean, the mid-sized company...
It's not applied there. It's not...
They are stuck. Sorry.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's not a big problem for Facebook or Google or Microsoft or the giants. They have
the system to do it.
To comply with this. But the big problem is for the rest of the world and the rest of the companies. So in some way it leads to like Swedish companies and retailers perhaps not being, having the courage to actually make use of data and AI because they are afraid of getting fined by GDPR. Do you agree with this? Or?
Yeah, so it's like a pendulum because you need to have too much, you have to, the regulators clearly force GDPR too early with the wrong consequences. But you have to regulate so you don't hamper innovation, but you have to reduce harm and keep the GDPR was for the EU politicians to keep the integrity of the EU citizens and punishing the tech giants. Because if you think about it, because
but it didn't work, did it?
But then, you know, like, what should we do when they mine our commodities, like the people, and they get the profits, you know, that, so the even
but them getting profit is not a negative thing in itself, is
okay,
it?
So
right?
so what I'm saying is, I'm an EU politician now. I'm trying to find out the way that their mind works. So they see these tech giants coming from the US and China, and they say they're exploiting the citizens of the EU and hurting their integrity.
Yeah, that's the problem.
That's the problem.
Yeah.
It's not the making profits that's a problem. It's the integrity and privacy issue,
no, it's
right?
so. What is the gain? So that hence the discussion if they would tax per citizens in the country that they exploit. And also
or use. I mean, they do provide value as well. They don't only exploit people, right? Or
we opt in because we think that they have something we want. We are drugged on the dopamine, and we are drugged on this is where you need to meet your friends.
But tell me what I'm missing. I'm not on Instagram and I'm not on Facebook. Tell me what I'm missing. No, I'm just saying that's an extreme stance to take. I think it creates. I'm surely missing out. But what they are concerned about is that someone is eating their cake and harming their.
You mean EU politicians?
The EU, that's where I'm coming at now. So I'm
putting the hat on. How does the EU politician think and rational when they come up with the GDPR?
They
setup?
know that there can't be a EU closed Facebook. They know that this is something that the EU citizens want. So it has to be restrictive for EU citizens, right? So what GDPR is hurting is also some kind of small companies, right? Entrepreneurs find it somehow like hurdlesome to comply, whereas you said the tech giants, they can afford it. But if you look at GDPR and you would look at it from an ethical perspective, it's like the consent pillar, which said that, okay, I have to. Now they're discussing, because I give my consent to share my data. Okay, so I share to you and you and you and you, and I don't know, since I'm not an AI professor, how these data sets can be combined and create insights that are privacy intrusive for that. So that pillar kind of fails. It's a false sense of security when it comes to.
No one reads the 30-40 pages of legal
terms of services.
Yeah, and now they're actually discussing whether that is legal to apply such an accountability to a citizen to know and read and stuff. So that's the.
Yeah, because they are exploiting that we kind of want this, and we love to have our friends on Facebook, so we are putting a blind eye. We are not getting enlightened enough to understand fully what the game is all about.
But we don't even put in a blind eye. I couldn't grasp what kind of insights that could be privacy intrusive for me. So even if I would be interested in reading all these documents, that's what's discussed on the EU
point
level now.
The normal citizen reading these documents, and it's been clear in the conversations with the Senate in the US or with the EU, the people who are the lawmakers and regulators, they don't grasp what the how the bot model really works. Even no one does.
Right.
They do, of course, the tech giants.
Right. Then we have the right for to be forgotten. You can't forget me, because algorithms has been trained on my data already. So you can't forget me. And when it comes to like the blockchain, you can't be forgotten on the blockchain, and that's a tricky one. But then it's the right for portability, and the trace I leave can't be forgotten. And then you have the right for explainability, algorithm transparency.
So,
and that's
so GDPR intention is good, but you have now basically highlighted a couple of key different dimensions why its execution on the tech giants will never work. I mean, like, how can they remove you from the algorithm? They can't.
They can't. So, and also when it comes to the right for explainability, what is algorithm transparency? Is it the source code? Here you go. Like, on what level can you explain to me so that I understand? And it's also who can demand the algorithm transparency. So in the EU, their discussion is whether the harm is there harm, because I can't by chance just say that I want the explainability on my terms and you have to withdraw. So you have to have like a sense of you're at stake and you're being harmed. Okay, so what is it? What's harm? Is it like social harm? An AI algorithm decided that I won't have custody over my children, or is it the financial loss when the algorithm said invest all my money in this portfolio? So it's like there are many undiscussed and unfinished considerations in GDPR based on the fact that, but I mean the intention is somewhat good, but then Ursula now is talking about the high stakes and the low stakes. So she wants to regulate with transparency, explainability.
The high risk and low risk kind of applications?
Yeah, so they're saying that, okay, so the high risk is public sector, transportation,
finance,
health.
money maybe.
No, education, recruitment, and then the lower stakes, and they said that they are going to be regulated, but then they're discussing the not so high stakes, and they say that there will be some kind of informal certificate. So just raising the question in this manner would be maybe better, but for us, we see that once like explainability is put on the table, it's like then the work begins. It doesn't end there, because then you have to say like, okay, so how do we want to explain this? Because if you're a public agency, you can't explain how you're going to get fined or how you're going to detect fraud. So it's sometimes
just to dig into explainability, because it's one of my favorite research topics as well. Yeah. Because we even have a PhD student looking only into how to bring forward explainability from especially the latest type of AI models. But what's your view on that? I mean, the risk is let's take a human for example, and let's say that you decide if I should get a loan or not from a bank. And you say no, and I ask why, and you give some explanation. I may buy it or I may not, but I can never really truly understand why you made that decision, can I, as a human? Ignore AI for now. Yeah.
Let me just give you a deeper aspect of that, because if you say that this data was the main reason for the decision of the algorithm, and then I go, how sure was the algorithm? Was it like twist my arm, or was it like binary? You're beginning to realize.
I think some technical AI techniques are getting there, but can you, as a human, if you just talk about humans, I mean, if you were as a human sitting at Swedbank, and you were deciding if I should get a loan or not, and you decide no, and then I come to you and ask why, and you say something. How can I trust that? How do I know if it's like close to 0, 1, or on the edge, so to speak?
So how this works? Because we worked with the Swedish Employment Agency, and they do profiling.
Yeah. It sounds bad, but it's a good thing. Thanks.
It's really good. We're far from being able to handle all the job seekers without AI. So AI is a prerequisite for retaining the social contract and just being able to afford this welfare model. So that's important that I say that. But so comparing a use case worker or a desk officer at Swedbank, and the checklist that they have under the corner, and then their human bias in combination, and then we have the AI model and the interaction with the use caser or the loan taker in understanding and adopting what status this is. Okay, you get a no. Okay, why? And is there a human in the loop here? Can I complain over this? Has someone interacted with this and put on an intuitive or experience-based human touch? Like, there's so many questions.
So let me ask a controversial question then. Let's say that you put humans out of the loop for the decision of giving a loan. But let's assume you had a really high, well-working explainability functionality of that algorithm.
Yeah.
Do you think at some point in the future, potentially an AI-based loan decision maker would be more trustworthy than a human?
Yes, of course. I believe that AI as a explainability with an AI will become as we to make us secure with it. Yeah. So I'm certain in that. But then I want to take this. Now I'm in the scenery of a bank. So let me tell you. So I come in. Now we twist the roles. So you are the banker. Yeah. And let us say I come in with my sneakers smelling bad and, I want a loan and there's some criteria. I don't know. There's only my list of if I have any dots in the register. No, I don't. So, but this is your bank account. It's 0, nothing there. No, we have those checking points, and the checking points say that there are 4 criteria. So we check. Yeah. And then there is this intuitive touch on it, and they say no. And then I say, let me come back to you and let me have you use my AI model, and you can apply it to every data leakage, and you can take all my data from me, my family, like everything you can get, and I will assure you that I have that I'm good. Yes. I'm compliant. Yeah. I'm creditworthy.
It's just that these 4 checks that you use now have in your rule-based analog approach, I didn't score so well. But in reality, I have a shitload of money, but it doesn't sit in Sweden. It sits something, it can be.
Or my behavior, even though the intuitively, like I smell bad, but my behavior is like I'm super strict on my
finances.
Yeah. So it comes out, it's like, no, actually, your AI model was brilliant. Now we want to give you this loan application is accepted. The thing is now that you have my data and you track me and you hinder me and you game me, and I'm suddenly yours. Where do we want to be?
Okay, cool. I'd love to explore more, having data problems, because I think
now it's on explainability.
Yes.
Yeah.
So we're still on explainability. Yeah. But okay, let's try to finish that point and then move to like data ownership and these kind of issues that can cause. But okay, if I understand you correctly, we for one need to have like a generic kind of decision-making process that can take other things than a checklist into account to have like a really trustworthy and hopefully like a system you can reason with to make that system become trustworthy in some way. Is that what you're saying in some way?
I think that the explainability models within AI with enough focus will create a communicative, explorable and more so this I want to talk about, because what is the goal here? The goal is not to have the right transparency of the explainability model. So the explainability model would be targeted at having a human understand it. Mm. So how would you deploy an AI explainability models to create or to meet the needs of different levels of knowledge within AI?
I can answer that. Sorry.
No, but
it's an awesome. I love this. This is actually a research
actually, but that whole topic, Dig worked on that in one of their last reports when they tried to highlight a framework for how how they see the public sector in Sweden. One of their biggest values, if you compare public sector in Sweden to other countries, is that we put a high trust in our public sector.
Yeah.
And now, if we want to have AI models, a key strategy is to keep trust high. And in order to keep trust high, we need to communicate, we need to be transparent upfront on how things work. So actually, the answer to your question, the best answer that you can read about is actually this model of how they've implemented, trustworthy, explainable, but how they go about to build trust. And they're in one way, instead of focusing on the technicalities of explainability, focus on, as you highlighted, what makes someone trust it and feel that it's right. So we need to explain how it works. We need to explain the whole context.
I don't know. Can you explain how a human brain works? Sorry.
No, but the point is this: instead of going into the technicalities of this, this is a rabbit hole.
It is.
Focus on the trust aspect and basically how can I communicate what is happening so people understand how it works. That's not the same to explain the AI model in all.
Core in this is to explain where you at the point where you can't explain. Do you want to go further? Well, yes, I do. I trust you, or I don't trust you. No, thank you.
Yeah.
But the awareness, but we know when we can't explain anymore. We know it's not like.
But that goes for everything, right? No, there are so many things. If you start taking this explainability topic into other topics of AI, I don't ask, could you please explain how my email ends up in your account? Explain that, otherwise I don't trust you. No one knows how they.
You know what? The time is really flying away, and we have like 25 minutes now.
That's another thing I have to talk about. I have to just an end note on GDPR. Okay. This is so good because, like, the right to be forgotten. Yeah. When I go to the doctor, and I tell him this is what my disease, like, he or she doesn't forget me. How should we mirror the right world? Should we? How much faultiness should we mirror from us humans for us to live in peace with AI?
Because we're asking things that we can't live up to in the analog world.
The thing is, I am convinced that we have to see AI for what it is, what it cannot do, what it can do, and what we ask it. Please, we know you can do this, but we prefer you not do that because that's not the world we want to create.
Yeah, so now we go into another. Explainability is one thing, but it's also more about the conscious choice and when we decide to trust and when we decide not to trust and not use it.
Can I try to summarize with one statement and see if you agree when it comes to the explainability topics? And then perhaps we can move a bit, perhaps if we have to ownership, but we have to touch the Nature article as well.
Yes.
And do that before the time runs out. But let me see if you agree with this. So explainability. I would argue that the best and most trustworthy systems, both human and AI, is when you combine human and AI together. And that means that AI is good at some things, like processing a lot of data. And potentially for taking a loan, AI has the potential to go beyond the checklist. It can actually go through much more data about you that a human never could. But it can't do other things. So human is really good at other things, which is like reasoning and have a deeper background knowledge that AI is very, very far from having today. So if you can combine the both of them, you would have the most trustworthy system where the human makes use of data for processing more data, but then have still the reasoning and putting things in a context that an AI can't do. Would that, in your mind, lead to the most trustworthy AI loan-giving system?
Yeah, of course. But again, so having an AI model, say that to answer to give it a more clarity, or to make it difficult to say no to that. It's like I'm a doctor, so I have a patient, and to diagnose this patient, I have the world's diagnosis for your type. Yeah. So I use this to increase my knowledge and depth about diagnosing you. And then I say what I need to say, and then the process of taking care of a very a bad diagnostic, and I would have to put a lot of empathy, right? So that would be my gift to you as a human with all of this insight. It's like my brain is augmented, but I have to put my empathy and creativity in being there for you as an expert in my field, but also as a human being. And you're gonna come out from that room, and you're gonna be a super happy patient with a bad diagnostic, because you think that I've given you some hope, right? That's part of getting better. I've given you the vision of being having a lot of knowledge, and also putting my expertise and my intuition into it.
Awesome. And let's go through some more topics. We have so many, we can't cover them all, but let's try to keep like 5 minutes max or something. In the Nature article, I think we can expand a bit more. But if we move to the next one, Anna, which could be the data ownership that we mentioned. And let me take like a devil's advocate kind of approach for you here, and see how you react to it. But let me see like this. I think we all use like Google and Bing and other search engines, and think they provide huge value for us in being able to augment our brains and get knowledge and facts very quickly, right? And then we get ads, that's potentially bad, but it could potentially bring value as well. I don't know. Would you, by providing data to, let's say, Google or Microsoft in their search engines, be willing to give the data to get better ads while having to search for knowledge? So the alternatives are this. Either you remove all the cookies, for example, you use some kind of privacy,
you have different browsers.
So they never can track you in any way, and doesn't provide any like data about you, and then you get ads that are completely impersonal. Or the alternative is that you allow cookies and you allow these companies to have data about you, and then you get ads that are much more relevant for you, that potentially can provide value in these ads could actually be useful for me.
It's all in the trust.
Yeah. It boils down to the trust, right? Do I trust how this company is dealing with my data? Then I will give them more, because then the personalization is a value that I think is the price for personalization is not so big to take. But if I don't trust them, I think the price to give personalization is that.
Yeah.
So is that the argument?
It's a currency. So it's so you can see it in different buckets. I would give my data for so say that someone says to me, I'm going to have your child's movement data. No, you're not. No, I'm going to have your child's movement data because we're going to build this play yard in a more safe environment. Yes, I will give it to you for free. Okay, so I want to have your data. You're going to buy for my service, and I'm going to use your data to profit. No, you're not. You are going to pay me. Okay, maybe not. And now we're like bargaining for the value of data. So you have like different accounts for different value, because our data is valued in different buckets, right?
So let's take another example, like Spotify or Netflix. And now you have the choice to not provide any data to them at all, and you get horrible recommendations for what song to listen to or movie to watch. And you have to pay them in any case.
So I've talked to someone within the music business saying that...
I have worked at Spotify for a long time as well, so if you don't know.
So what they say is that the consumption of music is somewhat being distorted by Spotify, because you want to push new things all the time. And I can relate to that, because the goal, like I want to talk about Buddhism, because Buddhism, the goal is not the end, it's the process and the suffering. So all of the AI, it's an MIT review article on that. Most of the AI frictionlessness goals is to like reduce suffering and to make it smooth, right? But that's our Western culture, so that is something that we need to think about. That the smoothness and the way that we go about things and the way that we want to have everything. Yeah, Gim, I want to have it. I want to have the ads. I want to have everything. I want to have it so I can buy. I want to have it so it's easy for me to learn more and more. I want more in my head, more. Yeah, maybe.
I think what you said makes a lot of sense, saying, you know, it's all about trust. I mean, you may trust Spotify having your list of previous songs that you listen to, right? Or
sorry, I want to criticize this, because if I would listen to the same record by Neil Young to make me happy. Like I have one record, I just want to listen to that. So that makes me feel good. What doesn't make me feel good is to have, I mean, what I'm saying is that the click, the more, the diverse, the tailored is not, and that's what I wanted to talk about Buddhism, that it's not always everyone's end goal to listen to the latest, to explore that field. No, I want to explore Argentine tango music. I want to go, like, when I put my team together, I want them to be as diverse as possible. I do not want a filtered bubble recommendation for my taste.
But here are many interesting things, and I'm not the Spotify guy, so it's better I take it.
Yeah, but keep it short now.
Because you know you can use Spotify many different ways. So one example could be if you are extremely niched in terms of what your music taste is, Argentinian folk music. Before Spotify, there was no way in hell.
I know, of course, it's beautiful, but let's take it not to the extreme, because the creativity process and the way that we consume it, it's fine. But let me the one saying I'm a nerdy one and I want all in this. I can't, I don't want to opt into that. I want to opt out.
And I think that should be an option. Always option to opt in or out.
So basically, you should be able to use.
I'm going to keep my CD record.
No, but it's interesting.
I'm going to listen.
This is a hint to Spotify. People should be able to have Spotify as the best search engine on their terms. Buddhism, explore music, without any recommendations. So you can use it like that, and then you can flick on the recommendations if you want to find alternatives. Yep. So we are different flavors for different.
We have to question the Western way of more and more, and on every aspect. Yeah, I'm going to yoga more. I'm going to meditate more. Like everything to optimize it. Let's go through. Now, this is a red wine discussion. I'm getting off track.
I'm actually very much into Buddhism and doing meditation, and I do that every day.
But it's interesting when you go down this
maybe you don't do enough.
True, but yeah, good question. Yeah, you're trying to. Yeah. Anyway, I wish we could speak much more about this. But for some people, at least, would you agree that recommendations provide a value?
Oh my God! Think about the positive externality in society. Like, who would I be, or who would we be without Spotify? It's the most beautiful tale of all. I love it, but I want us to question the targeting of goals in everything we do with AI and recommendations.
Cool.
Good. I think that's a summary. Yes. That's a good summary.
And we have.
Let's now go at least. Yeah, we need to go to the Nature article.
Yes.
So let me give you a quick intro, and then I'd love to hear you explain a bit how this got started. You worked with Max Tegmark and Virginia and so many other people with this article. And I can just say, I use this so many times when I speak about AI, which I think it's super beautiful, but sometimes I actually get critique about this article as well. But let me skip my intro and let just you explain a bit more.
What's this article? What is
how
it
did
for
it get started?
People who hasn't know anything about it? What is it and how did it get started?
Okay, so So is AI good or bad? So one thing we can relate it to is the United Nations Social Development Goals.
SDGs.
So we all work towards these, and it's really
it's a good way of
it's the
putting a
new
vision.
black, you know?
SDGs is the new black. Yeah. I like that. That's a new t-shirt, Goran. SDGs are the new black.
So you can't criticize us from having that as the world as we should strive for it. So thinking about AI, is AI leading us to this good world, or is it leading us to a backyard? Is it a disabler or an enabler of achieving
Beautiful.
the SDGs?
Simple question. Very good question.
And the article is not about saying yes or no. It's a saying, what research do we have or see today that
enables,
that shows that AI is an enabler for achieving one of these 17 goals? And what research articles, academic, do we have showing results that it's not?
And just to give a bit more background for people who don't know about the SDGs, etc. But this is the Agenda 2030 set up by UN for 5 years ago or something, I think, right?
So how many goals is it?
17. But there's sub-goals, so there's 169
targets, right?
So UN basically makes a statement, what do we want as a sustainable... 169 goals in 12 categories.
17.
In 17 categories, that basically highlights a sustainable Earth in all aspects. Could you simplify it like that?
Well, so we took the 17 goals and we had economy, environment, and society.
Mm-hmm. So 3 categories, yes. 17 goals, 169 targets that we want to measure.
So this approach, the beauty of this article is the approach to go ahead and say, what can we show research-based that enables these goals, and which are they? And what can we show that is being researched about that disables it? So it's not the reality, it's what's been researched, trying to show the reality. And then we made, I had the goals related to economics, and not all of them tasks, but we divided them into our niches.
So all of the authors got a part of the targets?
A bucket each.
Yeah. Yes. And then the work we did was for every task, 169 targets that we were assigned to do. We scanned the research literature and we read the articles that would prove as a disabler or an enabler. I mean, for the economic and productivity-wise and employment-wise, that was very important and interesting for me because, of course, there's productivity gains from AI. I mean, productivity, when you say labor and capital, that's a net effect that is an enabler, but it's also making a polarized world, and social tension would, in the long run, not be good for economic growth and job creation. And when it comes to job creation, it could be that, I mean, the sharing economy, it's like a light shining on everything, every skill, every person that is idle, and activating that. So that could lead, to a lot of activity with people having skills that would not be activated before. And also, like educational wise, when it comes to skilled labor, the tailored or the personalized education and the MOOCs and everything with the zero marginal cost of getting education and that would also be an enabler. Hence, what I said, what my
your task that you looked at.
Yeah, that was that. But I mean, my reflection on that is that the work on AI ethics and the work on also the AI and gender that's a tricky one, because when it comes to poor countries, there's a lot of, when it comes to education and education on sexual reproduction, and I mean there's a lot of information on it, but then again skill bias makes it go the other way around. So I think what my reflection is that there is not enough research on AI and gender, and it's not enough research on the sustainable long-term negative economic aspects of AI if not handled in a sustainable manner. But you wanted to come to the environmental part of it, and that's really interesting because there are...
Not necessarily, but it would be fun if you just backtrack a bit, how did it get started? Who took the initiative? And
Ricardo Vignosa at the KTH University. He's also affiliated to the center. He's extremely passionate and he's he's excellent in his task. So what they did, there's an informal team at KTH who engage in this topic of AI and the SDGs, and they kind of find out, like in the AI faculty or community, you just going a bit outside of that, like just glancing into the the gray zones and to other faculties, you find a lot of it's like AI been working on its own here in a silo, and just peeking out the value you can create by stepping between faculties and working with research like that is extremely valuable for publication and for your academic career. But the people in this group are extremely passionate and competent. But Ricardo and Francesco is actually the ones that has been the souls, and
there must have been so much work to get this, to put all these together, right?
How was the process? Because it's always tricky to work on a paper a big team.
Yeah.
And here we also have the fundamentals of quite diverse entry point, environment, economics, AI as the core discipline. So what was the working process here?
The uniqueness of this was the structure. I mean, we had lists and this is the work of Ricardo. He's brilliant, and just systemating it in the shared documents and making it easy for me in my work to kind of dig through it, just digging and digging and digging.
So you had a structured approach also to how to search and find and categorize and to map it all out.
Right.
So you could then work focused to analyze the text rather than because the search activity is quite huge.
Yeah, and it's only academic articles, so it doesn't really show that's where the gap is, where I see that there could be like.
So the sources was found on archive, or how did you find the source?
Yeah.
So the time is almost running out here, and for people that haven't read the article, how would you summarize the findings of the article?
Well, the research shown that AI is an enabler of the AI sustainability goals. Do you want to show them?
Yes, this one.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So the on the left side you see the positive impacts, and then the negative impacts. And going, for example, as I said, the economy. There are some at 10. Do you want to go to 10? The negative impacts.
Yeah.
Was it one of the categories that were more positively impacted by AI?
No, the other way around.
Should it go down or up? This is environment.
Yeah, there. reduced inequalities.
Yeah, so
that's the negative impact of it.
But out of the three categories, like economy, environment, and society, I guess it was it one of them that had a stronger positive impact of AI than?
Yeah, let's go up. It's environment.
Yeah, I think you can see it on the spider chart, but I think the spider chart is good.
Yeah.
Just follow the spider chart. You can sort of see where does it stand out.
Cool. So environment, had the strongest positive impact, and economy. Can you give some examples of the potential negative impact that AI could have? I can guess, but
that's the inequality.
Inequality.
The 10 is inequality. So I just wanted to scroll down to that.
Yeah, I see. That makes a lot of sense. The time is now running out, and we have so many more questions.
We can make it a 3-hour session
that we love to cover.
Because it's just to close the cycle here, because you said there needs to be, when it comes to environment, so we need to have, when it comes to recycling and the circular economy, so we need other incentives and targets for the companies that can actually affect and change the world. So it's just what do you target about? What do you measure? How can you measure it differently?
I think we should bring you and Matthias, the professor that you know, and he's professor in circular economy, and just have a session about that and see what we can come up with.
Yeah, we have one podcast with the theme of circular economy.
I think it's going to be also mentioned.
It would be fun. And I wish we could have more time with you right now as well. But
this is 2 hours.
I know you have to go home to your kids as well, and we have to let you go, so to speak. But before we do that, perhaps you can just mention what's next in your life.
No, so
next in just generally, personally, commercially, or professionally.
So professionally, things are happening. Like we're really taking a step towards strengthening our offering to organizations. Personally, it's just the best time to hang out with my kids.
Awesome. And if you were to recommend someone to be on this podcast, do you have any specific persons in mind?
So Sofia Benz is you know her, she's an angel investor and she's partner at Sherry. She owns the Femtech area, and the Femtech area is, of course, innovations driven by AI. So I encourage you also to read the book, The Invisible Women, because that amplifies in AI that women hasn't been part of research, so we're kind of visible. Using data with male behavior and preferences will always will never get us equal. So we just need to be awake on that part. But Sofia Benz is one of the world's most kind persons, but she also an excellent investor, an angel investor. So I would recommend her on this pod.
So that would be very interesting from many aspects. You know, the women in tech, but also we haven't had any investor perspectives on the podcast yet. So that is to have the angel investor perspective and discuss AI would in itself also be very, very nice. Good idea.
And she's one of the core people started Spotify. So you can talk about that.
That's a good point.
Good point.
Thank you.
Thank you. It's been so nice.
And it goes so fast, doesn't it?
Yeah.
I hope we have a chance to continue the discussion.
Yeah, no one has been listening, right? So.
You don't know.
We will have the difficult task of trying to chunk this up into small, interesting topic of discussions later that we can publish as well. But we'll try to do the best we can with that. But it's been a true pleasure to have you here.
It's been time has been flying. And
to talk and go down rabbit holes to be allowed. Isn't that cool?
Yes, where it's uncomfortable.
Yeah. Yes, exactly. And it's weird how long format still is not long enough. So
no, it's interesting.
Yeah. Cool. I wish you the very best new year 2021. Likewise. And I hope it will be better in many aspects, but it's been great to have you here and start off the new season that we have.
Yeah.
Thank you
what a
so
kick-ass start to the season. Yes. Thank you, Anna.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.